right, you guys, as you can see by the thumbnail, this is episode 96 of Inner Demons. I know it's been forever. I'm not even going to offer up no excuses. It is what it is, but we're going to get back on track. Anyways, let me jump into this next episode. So, might take me a minute to get my mojo back, to get back to where I was, but episode 95, Inner Demons, I believe I was talking about the issue involving Paniagua, an individual that basically slaughtered his two daughters and his old lady. If you guys don't remember the situation I'm talking about, there was an individual that I believe it was sometime around 2007 or 2008. It might have even been a little bit later where, out there in San Jose, this individual, for whatever reason, stabbed his old lady and stabbed, I believe it was two of her daughters. I believe it was his daughters as well. They were his biological daughters. But anyway, he slaughtered all three of them. And, it was personal because I knew somebody that was and somehow related to the victims. One of the victims, the little girl, one of the little girls named Bubbles. I think she was like 3 or 4. She was a baby. But this dude, he basically stabbed the life out of all three of them. And, an individual like that, I didn't want to be nowhere around that individual. I could not program around somebody like that. So I told you guys what happened in that situation. There's no need for me to go back over the details. They ended up getting him up out of there just in time. Otherwise, he would have got mollywopped. We were already in the process of getting this individual, but that just wasn't meant to happen. Anyway, so after they took Paniagua out of there that day, I continued to try to complete 5C, that program. At the time, it was called Breaking Barriers. I'm not sure if, the county jail still has that program, but basically what it was, Breaking Barriers. This was a program designed for former gang members that wanted to leave their past behind and were trying to break barriers. A lot of gang members, they pick up a lot of bad habits. The way that they walk, the mannerisms, the way they talk, the way that they perceive themselves, thinking patterns, addictions. There's just a lot of different things that gang members, for one reason or another, they think it's cool or it's part of the lifestyle. They pick up these patterns, and a program such as Breaking Barriers is designed to help somebody like that break those barriers. Find new ways of thinking, find new ways of, different thinking patterns, try to replace a lot of those negatives with positives. For a lot of individuals that are trying to break those barriers, it could be a good program, but it just depends on the individual. When you've reached a point to where you become either you're tired and you no longer want to, to live that type of lifestyle, or you've gotten to a point where you've realized that they've turned their backs on you, and you come to the realization that, it makes no sense to continue being loyal to a group that is trying to unalive you. This is a good program. It can be a good program. They have a lot of different programs within that program, such as Alcohol Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. I think they have something that deals with better parenting skills. And then, like I've told you guys, one of my main purposes for going to that program was because of the GED program that they had. They offered you an opportunity to, get your GED. And that's something that everybody should take advantage of if they have the opportunity to get their GED, especially if you were like me, if you dropped out of school, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, and, you didn't get your high school diploma, which most of us that are a part of that lifestyle didn't. We drop out of school at some point, and there's very few gang members that get their high school diploma unless they're just late bloomers. I don't know. They get into the game late in their 20s or something, but it's just not that common. So that was one of the main incentives for me to go to that program. So, I signed up for the GED program, and I started to take some of the pre-test, some of the tests that help you prepare for the actual test. And, I want to say that a lot of the time I spent up in Pelican Bay in the SHOOT program trying to self-educate myself, that kind of helped prepare me for that GED test, believe it or not. That's one thing I can say. The one positive thing I can say about the Nuestra Familia and the NR, the Nuestra Raza, and I can probably even say this for some of the other groups, for the BGF, for the Aryan Brotherhood, for the Mexican Mafia, for the Sureños, because being up there in Pelican Bay, we all took time to study, to better our education. And it wasn't just about trying to indoctrinate ourselves, in the gang politics and trying to groom ourselves to become better criminals and better gang members. It wasn't just about that. We actually ordered books, and there were courses that some of the guys up there were taking. Some of the homies that I knew were taking college courses up there. And we were always encouraged throughout the time I was an NR member up until the time I would become an NF member later on. We were always encouraged to pursue some form of self-education. Pick up a dictionary, a thesaurus, and read it from front to back, and try to incorporate 1 or 2 words a week in your vocabulary. Replace those words with some of the old words you use. Those are things that we used to do to try to help better our education. There was a time where I spoke without using any profanity. I know I got a bad mouth now. I drop the F-bomb a lot. I use a lot of slang. And, over time, I've just relegated back into that. But at one point, when I became an NF member, and, it was encouraged to conduct yourself a certain way, to carry yourself a certain way, to represent yourself and to communicate a certain way. I wouldn't use profanity, and there was just a certain way that I would, communicate, that I would address people. And, what helped me was reading a dictionary. I don't just throw around big words that I look up, that I Google for a lot of these stories that I tell you guys. These are words that I actually use. And, I've told you guys this before. I'm not trying to get off track, but I've told you guys this before. I don't consider myself a polished speaker, somebody that's real articulate. I'm just a regular average cat that speaks from the heart. That's all you're gonna get from me. You're not gonna get no college professor. So, it is what it is. But I am educated, and a lot of that was because of the time I spent up there in Pelican Bay self-educating myself. But, again, the Sureños used to do it, the ABs, the Woods, the Africanos, the Blacks, everybody up there in the Bay used to do it. And we used to share literature. We used to share education with each other, even though we were enemies. And at that time, even in the early 90s, when it was on, and we all knew if the doors pop, we're going to come out and we're going to try to take each other's heads off. There was still a level of respect that we showed each other. It makes no sense to create more of a hostile environment where there's a lot of animosity and stress when we're already in a hostile environment. We're already in a stressful environment. We're locked up. We're caged up like animals. We can't get out. Obviously, some of us are at the lowest points in our lives being locked up, especially if you're doing a long issue of time. But that's one of the things that we used to do is share literature. And that was for the purpose of educating ourselves. And a lot of Sureños that I was neighbors with up there, they would be studying a lot of Mexican history, a lot of historical books, everything from, you talk about just everything, not the stuff you learn in school. I'm talking about these guys used to go deep and, study all that kind of stuff. And we used to encourage each other. Hey, homie, hey, check this out. I got this good book on, on whatever. I got this good book on Aztec history or Mayan history. You want to check it out? So that's the kind of stuff that we used to do up there in the Bay. But that would actually help me in some ways for the GED test when I took it in the Santa Clara County Jail. Now, one of my weaknesses, I've always been bad at math. I know how to sell drugs. I know how to add. I know how to subtract. I know when somebody shorts me on my money. I know how to count my profit. But when it comes to decimals, fractions, algebra, and all that good stuff, I don't know nothing about it. I'm completely lost. I remember a little bit of that stuff, but who uses that in the real world anyway? So that was one of the only areas that I really had to study when I was there in the Santa Clara County Jail was math. That was my weakness, as is the case with a lot of other guys. Now, when I was taking this test, there was a couple other homies that were taking it with me that were my co-defendants. And, there was one in particular that I held in high regards. This individual, I embraced him from the time I met him, and he reminded me a lot of myself when I was younger. So, he was taking that test as well, and I encouraged him to take it. Hey, bro, you need to get that. It's going to help you in several different ways, not only in the situation you're in right now, but once you hit the streets, once you get back out there, this is something that will help you, especially as far as like employment. So, he took the test as well. And his weakness was also math. And I'm not going to identify you, boy, but when we were taking the actual test, after however long we studied, I forget how long it is, but there was a bunch of pre-courses that we took in. There was weeks of studying. When we got to the math, there was some math problems that we were both stumped on. And I'm not gonna lie, I guessed them. I guessed a couple of them, and I ended up getting them right. I think I got one or two wrong, but those were the ones that actually passed me. And say what you want, but again, I passed everything else with flying colors. It was just some math equations or some math problems that, again, nobody uses in the real world, some algebra type of shit. EY minus Z plus equals 2 4A divided by 6 2 3 4 5. You know what I mean? So I end up passing the test. And, as a requirement for passing the test and getting the GED, I had to go through the graduation ceremony. And it's something that I did not want to partake in. I did not want to throw on no blue cape with the little blue hat and throw my little whatever that thing is to the left or the right, whatever you do. I thought I was too cool for high school. Seriously. I didn't want to do it. And unfortunately, I had to. In order to get my GED, I had to partake in that. And I felt like a clown, but that's all part of being stuck within that, that mentality. I thought I was too cool to do it. And I didn't want nobody to see me, vulnerable like that. And be supposed to look a certain way, be supposed to carry himself a certain way. And this right here, this is some more funny bunny type of stuff. So, anyways, I knew it was something I had to get through. So eventually I did it. They held the ceremony. And, when that class graduates, they put on some little, I don't know, they throw on some kind of song or something, and everybody marches from like the top tier down to the bottom tier. And you line up and they present the certificates, and then you got to go through that ceremony. Whatever they do, that thing that's they flip it to the side, meaning that you graduated. So that was something that I accomplished there in 5C. Now, the other thing I'll say about 5C, I ended up staying there for probably about, I want to say it was a good 6 months. And it wasn't cakewalk, man. It wasn't an easy program to adjust to. It wasn't an easy environment to adjust to. You guys got to understand. I came from a max tier. I haven't really interacted with other inmates. I haven't really been around anybody in the county jail. And this wasn't a choice that I made myself. I was in this situation because, you guys already know the story, but I was there in that situation. The door was shut on me, and I had to come to the realization that it's over. It's a wrap. No matter what I do, that's not going to change. So I was still struggling in my mind, in my mind, on one hand, I don't know if I'm, expressing this or articulating this the right way, but on one hand, I felt like I was still active because this wasn't a choice I freely made. And on the other hand, I had to, this was something that I had to adjust to. This was a reality. So it was hard to, go through that transition, to be around some of these individuals that I didn't really care for. I'll be honest with you. Some cats acted like just straight idiots. I don't know what it is about a lot of dudes that fall off, or a lot of dudes that get deemed and go to that side. But it seems like when they do, their real character comes out, and they're not likable individuals. They're not individuals that I would kick it with. They start throwing feces, throwing piss, talking, smack off their door all day, just doing dumb shit. They let their hygiene go. They let their personal appearances go. They just act out, and they have no sense of self-respect. And that was something that I had to adapt to. There's a lot of loose cannons on that side. A lot of dudes that were whacked because they were idiots. So, I kept my circle tight. There was only a few individuals that I really interacted with, and that was the reason why. A lot of those dudes are J-cats, and a lot of the times you can end up in a conflict with somebody over something petty. There were a couple of situations that I remember where I was gonna actually have to thump a couple dudes over some stupid shit, because they thought that they could play a certain way, or they thought that just some petty shit, just some petty shit that normally wouldn't happen on the other side, if you were active. But there was actually a couple situations where I got it a couple of the homies, and I told them, hey, I'm gonna take this fool in the cell and I'm gonna beat the brakes off him. But those situations, they didn't end up happening because at the end of the day, they really didn't want it. And I'm not trying to talk tough. I'm just telling you guys straight up. A lot of dudes just wolf all that good stuff, and then when it really comes down to it, that's not what they want to do. So, I had to be mindful of that. I had to be mindful of the type of individuals that, I interacted with on that side. And that in itself was another something else I had to adjust to. So, anyways, I get my GED. I'm there for about 5 or 6 months. Classification at some point, usually they'll kick somebody out as soon as they get their GED. But, our situation was a little different. They still considered us high profile. So, they did things, just they did it a different way, straight up. And call it what you want, preferential treatment, I don't know, a lack of knowing where to put us, but they let us stay there for about 5 months. And the thing that I noticed that they did is they, whenever they moved me or they moved any of us, they did it in unison. They did it as a group. They would move 5, 6, 7, 8 of us together, and we'd end up in another part of the jail. Anyways, the last thing I'll say about 5C was, they had a couple other programs. There was one in the morning, I forget what it was called, but it was actually ran by a counselor that I knew from when I was like 17 or 18 years old. I was in a drug program in San Francisco called Delancey Street. And this guy was a counselor in that program. And just so happens 20 something years later, this guy is working in Santa Clara County Jail as a counselor for this program. Anyways, his program consisted of a lot of written essays and a lot of verbal breakdowns where you'd have to stand up in a group setting, and there could be anywhere from 40 or 50 cats in this group. And there would be a topic that you would have to talk about. A lot of it was your personal addictions, things that happened in your past, trials, tribulations, all that kind of stuff, and you'd have to break it down. And that was something that I really wasn't feeling, that because half the dudes in that program I didn't interact with anyway. So I didn't really feel comfortable talking about, my past and my personal history from the time I was a kid, growing up and all that stuff. So that was something else I had to get past being in that program. And I'm not saying this with any ego or any arrogance at all, because I mean there's no reason for me to do that. But it seemed like whenever I would get up and I'd start running my breakdown, my verbal breakdown on whatever it was, everybody would used to stop and just straight tune in. It was like these guys wanted to know what made me tick, how I thought. They wanted to know, more about this individual boxer from San Francisco. It wasn't me as an individual. It was that character boxer from San Francisco, the NF member, that these guys wanted to know more about. You guys got to understand, out there in San Jose, when I was, still active, I was doing my thing. A lot of people knew who I was. My name was all over the streets out there, especially during the time when I was a regimental commander out there. I was functioning in, Santa Clara County. So here I am. I end up in the county jail and I end up in this situation. So these guys want to know is, everything and anything they can about me, because I don't talk to half of them. That's just something else. That was a personal observation, that something I noticed, during those groups. So anyways, like I said, it was about 5 or 6 months later, after being in breaking barriers, after I got my GED, I got the certificate. Oh, by the way, I got that graduation picture of me with that hat on, with that blue cape on, but I'm not gonna show it to you guys. I'm just telling you right now. I had to take that picture and I took it because it was something I had to do, and I have it, and I know you're gonna ask me to post it, but I'm not gonna do it. Anyways, so 5, 6 months go by, and classification, they eventually make their way up there, and they come up there and they're basically like, look, man, you've been here for 5 or 6 months already. You got your GED, you passed the program. There's really no reason for you to stay here. We need the beds. We need beds for other guys that are trying to come in and take the program as well. So, we're going to have to move you to another part of the jail. And, I dreaded moving around, because it was just, this was all still new terrain to me, so it's like once I get situated in one spot, have to, go to another spot. And especially being, around the individuals I was, it was just, you don't know what to expect. You don't know what you're going to end up getting into. It wasn't fear or nothing like that. It was, more of just who I was going to be around, and what type of individuals. And that's what I was really trying to be mindful of. I didn't want to be around certain cats. I wasn't trying to dictate that, but the bottom line is, if I'm going to go somewhere, if there's certain individuals there that, I'm not compatible with, I'm going to do what I got to do, period. And there ended up being a couple situations that you guys are going to hear about where I had to do what I had to do because they put certain individuals around us. Anyways, so when they came up to 5C, classification came up to 5C, I want to say it was July. July came up there and he was like, hey, we got to move you guys. This is where, you can go. You can go to, I want to say it was 5A or 5B. And then they had like on the 6th floor, or you can go somewhere in the old jail, Siberia, and a couple other places that they had. And from my time in that county jail up until I went to 5C, I had stayed in the old jail during that whole time. And that was the better part of the jail to do your time in, is the old jail. It's just a different program, different environment, different setup. The way that the cells are, everything about it is just old school. And if I was gonna move from 5C, Siberia seemed like the best place to be. So that's what That's what I told Jalad. Hey, if you're gonna move me anywhere, just go ahead and throw me over there in Siberia. And I wasn't too thrilled about the idea of going to Siberia because Siberia, even though I wasn't familiar with it, I had heard about Siberia before all this happened. And from what I knew about Siberia, it was like some big dorms where you had anywhere from you had some small eight-man tanks, you had some like 4-man tanks, and then you had some 16 or 20-man tanks. And it was just a hallway with a tank on this side, one on this side, one on this side, one on that side. There was probably about 5 on this side and 5 on that side, different sizes. And there, a lot of shit was happening over there in Siberia. Not just dudes getting their wigs split, but there was a lot of other things that we were hearing about. They were hitting drugs down there. It was just a cool program. So that's what we elected to do. And again, whenever there would be a move like this, they wouldn't go to any of my other co-defendants. It seemed like they always still came to me. Like in some sense, some type of way, I was still a leader. And I stopped seeing myself like that. I was no longer presenting myself as a leader. I didn't carry myself like that. I wasn't barking orders or portraying myself as still being super active or anything like that. I understood the situation. I understood that, it was different now, that I was standing on my own 2 feet and, I was representing myself as an individual. I wasn't representing a collective. So if I got into a squabble with somebody, it was just between me and that individual. And that was it. And I was okay with that. I didn't try to portray anything else. Anybody that was there in the Santa Clara County Jail with me and says anything different, they're lying. What I will say is that a lot of my co-defendants that worked with me on the streets that were just used to the relationship that I had with them, that's kind of still how they looked at me. It's hard to explain, but it's still it was obvious. It was obvious, and it wasn't something that I was encouraging. It was something that they were just doing themselves. I didn't change the way that I was because I was on that side. I continued to be who I was. I continued to program a certain way. I didn't stop rolling up my mattress. I didn't stop doing all those things, and it wasn't to portray me as being active. It was just because my mindset was programmed a certain way. Security, education, respect, honor, loyalty, those things still matter to me, regardless of the overall situation. People could spin it, whatever they want to say. That's cool. You'll never understand. But I'm talking about the way that I represented myself, the way I continue to carry myself. I still carried myself with some level of respect. I didn't, you know, digress. I didn't turn into some idiot. I didn't, start disrespecting people. That wasn't me. It's just not my character. Anyways, we go to Siberia. We all get moved. They do a massive move. I think there was about 8 of us. By this time, I'm telling you guys, there were so many people that were jumping on that bus that it was almost like, man, who's left? The only ones that were left are the ones that probably missed the bus because they didn't get on it when they had that opportunity. There's probably a lot of dudes that, that claim that they were solid, they held their mud, they got through it, but at the end of the day, I know for a fact that everybody was approached and that everybody entertained it. A lot of guys just didn't get what they wanted. I gave you guys an example of what happened with Happy, the individual that tried to dictate everything that was going to happen to him, all the way down to I want immediate release. I want to get out. I want to keep me in double red. I want this from my old lady. I want that. I want groceries. I want a brand new pair of Jordans. But anyways, just trust me when I tell you guys that everybody considered jumping on that bus. And lawyers talk. All the lawyers, they know everything that goes on. Obviously, when their client talks to certain people, they know, and it gets around. They share information, and I'm not gonna throw nothing out there because it doesn't serve no purpose now. So we get to Siberia. They do this massive move. They move about 8 of us down there. And I ended up going into a tank that it was a smaller tank. I think there was 4 of us in that tank. And I actually ended up in a tank with John Rodriguez, an individual that I helped. I pulled him off the BNL when we were in Quentin. I think I told you guys this story in one of my war stories, or at some point, I think I talked about that. But anyways, I got there and he was shut down. They had his cell identified as an unalive cell. So when I got there and I got the rosters and I got the pass down from the last homie that let me know everything that was going on there, he was shut down. But after a couple other homies from San Jose encouraged me to look into a situation, they were like, B, this dude, he got a bad rap. As soon as I heard that Lancho was involved, Dancing Bear was involved, I looked into it, found out that this guy was, he fell victim to bad politics. So I put my neck out there for him, took him off the BNL, and I had him back on the program with us. He was back on the morning Gallo, and he was participating in the Glesha and everything that we were doing there. But he ends up going to his next destination. Somebody's there that obviously was familiar with the situation that happened with Lancho, and regardless of the fact that I cleared him, all they focused on was that I don't even believe he had an opportunity to tell them that I cleared him. And if he did, they were just focused on the fact that he had a green light on him. So he ends up back on the other side. Anyways, he was there. There was a couple other dudes in Siberia that I would end up seeing, eventually when we come out. So I'll touch up on this in the next episode, but Siberia was probably one of the best places that I did time at while I was at the Santa Clara County Jail, while I was on that side. While I was active, it was definitely Second East and South Max on the 3rd floor, on the 3rd deck. But Siberia, there was a lot of shit that went on in Siberia that I was having my way down there. And there was a lot of stuff that would later end up happening, amongst all of us, where a lot of us needed to get shit off our chests, and that was the place to do it. These were open dorms, and you had as much interaction, as much contact as you wanted. So with a little bit of alcohol, those things would come into play. They would come up to the surface. One thing would lead to another. Before you know it, there's teeth and blood all over the floor. That's no bullshit. I'm going to get into that in the next episode. And, that's referred to as one of the big brawls that happened in Siberia that everybody and their mother was trying to make a big deal out of. Defense attorneys heard about it. People were getting, their teeth knocked out, and people were getting smashed, and there were all kind of people that were trying to run with it and make something bigger out of it than what it really was. But all it was just a lot of us that needed to get some, a few things off our chest, and we did. Anyways, this is probably a good spot right here to end on. I know that you guys probably want a longer episode. It's been a while since I did an Inner Demons. There's no excuse for it other than just there's other things that I've been trying to establish. There's other things that I've been tending to that benefit the channel. Just trust me on that. But I'm going to get back into the Inner Demons. I tell you guys that I have a lot of plans and different things lined up for the channel. And I don't want to just sound like I'm talking and I'm making a bunch of false promises. That's not what I'm doing. You got to understand though, I'm one individual, and I'm taking on a lot of different things by myself, which is cool. Sandman is there to help me. And then obviously I got one of the best, thumbnail makers in the game, but there's still a lot that goes into what I do as far as putting these stories in context and telling them to you guys. I've had a lot of viewers get at me and tell me, hey, B, man, you're not putting out enough content. And man, I got to watch some of your old stuff. And I appreciate that. The fact that you're watching some old stuff rather than, going to another channel, I appreciate it. But just give me time. Give me time to work my mojo. Like I've been telling you guys, I'm not going to continue to just keep on making false promises. But, it takes a lot of work to put into these videos. So bear with me. Bear with me. I'm working on trying to find a system that will cut down on some of the time that it's taking me to create a video. So I'm probably going to cut back on a lot of the pictures and a lot of the unnecessary research that I do, and maybe even make the stories. I'm just going to flip it and do it a different way. Some of you guys like the longer stories, some of you like the shorter ones. I know that a lot of you say that I often repeat myself. I get it. I've heard it 1,000 times. Just call me Johnny 2 times, okay? Hey, it's a flaw. It's something I'm mindful of. I'll try to find ways to get through it, but stop trying to beat me up in the comments. It's not gonna help me, get through those flaws. It's not gonna help me correct them. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Inner Demons. You guys will start seeing this back on the regular lineup. I'll start getting them in as much as I can. You'll probably get this video late in the morning, and the American Bully giveaway will already be done. But good luck to all you guys that entered into the giveaway. I hope, these dogs go to somebody. That's right. I can say it now. 2 dogs are going to be given away tonight. You guys only think that there's one, but there's actually going to be 2. I hope these dogs go to a good home. I hope somebody, whoever gets them, I hope that they have intentions on giving these dogs all the attention and love that they need. These are good dogs, because this whole thing was premised on, trying to give one of these dogs away to a good kid, somebody that's, a kid that's doing good in school, that's staying away from drugs and alcohol, that's trying to do all the right things. It's not a mandatory requirement, but that was the whole concept. Anyways, with that being said, I appreciate you guys tapping in. I'll see you guys later on tonight for the giveaway. This your boy B, and I'm out.